Slate has a fascinating piece from Matt Barnum. Teachers make less on average today than they did in 1989. So, I find it hilarious that in mainstream media discourse, you have, war on X, fill in the blank, whatever it may be. In right-wing outlets, they often say, war on coal. There's a war on coal. Or war on Christmas. That's what there is. But usually the shit that they say there's a war on, there's not. But there are plenty of things that there is a war going on against them, but it's not brought up. This is one of them, teachers. So apparently, 1989, man, they make less on average today than they did in 1989. So the average American public school teacher earned $58,950 in the 2016-2017 school year, according to federal statistics. Adjusting for inflation, that's about $1,000 less than in 1989, and $3,000 less than 2009. In 1994, listen to this fact, teachers' weekly compensation, including benefits, was equal to that of similarly educated professionals. By 2015, teachers nationally earned 11% less than similarly educated professionals. So, listen, I've spoken about this before. I'm sure this is a thought many of you have had, but I find it funny that there are many positions in society that I think should be looked at through the lens of, extreme reverence and deference. You know what I mean? We tend to do that with, people in the military, for example. There's this kind of mindless military worship in the sense that, they're above reproach. Like if a general says something about a conflict, oh, well, their opinion by definition is higher than that of some schmuck who wasn't in the military. And wow, look at that. Oftentimes the person from the military is saying we should go to war in many instances. And then the person who says we shouldn't go to war is just a random dude who has the opinion that maybe we shouldn't go to war, but you could dismiss that guy because he wasn't in the military. The guy who was in the military, oh, we must have deference to our veterans. Now, that kind of, feeling of, wow, look at what this person is doing, I think that should be geared towards teachers. That should be directed at teachers, because if you think about it, they really are primarily responsible, maybe secondary to parents, for shaping the minds and the perceptions of the younger generation moving forward. So, that is a gigantic responsibility to try to impart wisdom and knowledge, and not just factual data, but also how to think, to teach these kinds of things to young people. And, that should be a very revered position, and I think it should be, pretty well compensated. But when you have a market system, in the case of the private schools, of course they get paid much less in private schools than they do in public schools. But also in the public schools now, they're struggling. Obviously they had the West Virginia teacher strike, and thankfully they won the concessions that they were looking for, which was huge. But then now you have the Oklahoma strike going on. In some districts in Oklahoma, there's now a 4-day school week so that the teachers can go work at Walmart on the 5th day to try to, make more money, to make ends meet. We've seen stories of an Oklahoma teacher who had to donate plasma to pay the bills. This is what we're talking about. Arizona now, they're on the brink of taking that next step and doing the strike because they haven't had a raise in such a long time. But also, it's not just that. In the case of the Oklahoma strike, for example, people who were involved in that strike reached out to me and said, no, I misstated it a little because I argued that they were doing it to get an increase in wages. They were like, no, it's not just an increase in wages. It's also, they just need more funding for the classroom. They're using textbooks that are really old and outdated, and it's amazing how all these states have money for corporate tax breaks, and they do. That's what they do. They give away corporate tax breaks. They give away tax cuts for the richest residents in those states. But, oh no, God forbid you have a fully funded education system. God forbid you pay teachers the wage that they deserve. So here you go. And for the life of me, I don't understand why people on the left don't steal that framing. of the war on X, war on teachers. If they're making 11% less than similarly educated professionals compared to 1994, that's a fucking war. That's a war. So they're making less than they did in 1989 when you adjust for inflation. Come on, man. That reminds me of the fact about minimum wage, that people who earn the minimum wage today make less than people who earned the minimum wage in 1968 when you adjust for inflation. So these are huge. That's a huge fact. And war on workers, war on poor people. That's what there is. There's a war on poor people. There is class warfare in this country. It's waged by the rich and the corporate class and the lobbyists against working people. So it's a shame. I support these teacher strikes all across the country. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think we should actually do a general strike. We should do a general strike. We should have our demands clear cut. Dr. Martin Luther King had the Poor People's Campaign. And we need to pick up that ball and continue running with it and do a general strike and fight for very specific, clear goals. Pro-union legislation, living wage, Medicare for all, free college, ending the wars. These are the things we have to fight for, and these are the things we have to get.